Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out to this training. It's important that you're here. Hopefully everybody is signed in if you haven't already, but please make sure that you sign in on the sign-in sheet. Put your name, your department, and who you're representing so we can have record of that for our annual reporting that we have to do. My name's Jason Donetti. I know a lot of you. I'm the Stormwater and Recycling Educator for the Muncie Sanitary District and Stormwater Management Department. I've been in this position for 13 years, doing trainings for quite a while, so I've met a lot of you, so it's good to see some familiar faces. We had to take a little break, obviously, from the trainings with COVID-19, and in-person trainings didn't happen, so we did a lot of stuff online the past couple years. But now that things are doing better and in the clear with COVID, we're going to start resuming our in-person trainings when we can. And I know you're busy. I know you have a lot of work to do, and we're going to try to get you out of here as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible after we cover a few things here that we have to cover for our annual training. So I'm going to pass it to my colleagues here to introduce themselves, and then we'll jump right into the presentation.
I'm Laura Boley. I am the MS4 coordinator, and I handle illicit discharge detection and elimination. We'll talk about those in a second, and thank you for coming out.
And I am Courtney Pruitt. I have met some of you, and I am still learning a lot of people as I do inspections. I mostly inspect construction sites, but I also do the facility inspections, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And I've only been here for about 1.5 years now.
All right, thank you. So we'll go ahead and get started. Basically, we have a federal unfunded mandate to eliminate our combined sewers. And so we have combined sewers in our community. It's an old system where the sanitary pipe and the storm pipe combine as one pipe, and it travels to our treatment plant. And if there's a significant rainfall event, it could cause that CSO to overflow and discharge diluted sewage to the river. So that happens quite a few times a year right now with that system, but we are under a federal mandate to eliminate and separate our combined sewer system. So here's just some graphics explaining a combined sewer overflow, and what happens as far as when a combined sewer does overflow. And that sign up there that you see, that sign is posted at some of the active combined sewer overflows that we still have in the city of Muncie. It's a long process. It's projected to be done in 2032. It started in 2012. It's 5 4-year phases, and we're about halfway done. So there's a lot of construction still to be done. We're also talking to IDEM about potentially updating the long-term control plan to where it might not necessarily be 100% separation, but we would have to get their approval for that because, as you can imagine, it's become very expensive as well to do this project. So just some background information related to our combined sewer stuff. So we do have a new permit. And everything that we do is run by an MS4 General Permit. MS4 stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer Systems, and we administer our stormwater program, and we are co-permittees. So if you look around here, you're going to see Muncie Sanitary District employees, you're going to see City of Muncie employees, you're going to see Delaware County employees, you're going to see Ivy Tech employees, and you're going to see Town of Yorktown employees. Our program covers all of those entities. It's a unique program. There's some like us throughout the state, but not a whole lot. But we are a unique program where we cover all of these different entities. The only one in Muncie that is a separate entity is Ball State. Ball State has their own permit and their own program. So in our general permit guides us to do a lot of things, including this training, where we have to give mandatory annual trainings to all municipal employees. We also have to give department head trainings, which we did last month with department heads of all the different entities. And that's something that we have to do on a regular, ongoing, annual basis. Something new with this permit, which we'll talk about a few times, is we have to train new hires as well, seasonal hires and part-time hires within 30 days. Is it 30 days? Yeah. So when your department gets a new hire, within 30 days, we have to get them trained on the annual training that we're talking about today. We're working on some ways to do that. That's partially why we're recording today, so we could set up some opportunities where they could watch a recording and take a test. But that's something that we're going to be working on for new hires and new employees that are coming in. So again, I've already explained our co-permittee structure. It was established in 2006. So we've been working with that for a while, but now is the new general permit that has some changes that we're going to cover in our presentation today. Another thing that you need to know is that IDEM audits us. So IDEM stands for the Indiana Department of Environmental Management. They audit us on an annual basis, typically on an annual basis, where they will come in and they will do surprise visits to facilities. So they'll come in and they'll get with us. They'll have a clipboard and spreadsheets and all this stuff, and they'll come in and they'll say, okay, I want to visit this facility, and this facility today, and then we'll hop in the truck and we'll come over, and it's somewhat of a surprise visit. And so if we come over to your facility with IDEM, they may come up to you and say, hey, have you been trained on the stormwater program today? And the answer is yes, right? And then they might ask you a few questions. So that's why we work with you to prepare you for that. And that's why Courtney does facility inspections to get you prepared for that. And that's just something that we need to be aware of, because it happens all the time, and they can be random visits. Usually they're scheduled so we can give you a heads up, but that's just something that happens on a regular basis that I wanted to make you aware of. I'm going to show a little video here, and there's a couple videos, and they're short, spread throughout this, but it'll give you kind of a better idea of what we're talking about when it comes to municipal good housekeeping and pollution prevention.
Spills, leaks, and drips are the most common sources of stormwater pollution from municipal facilities. Oils, fuels, coolants, paints, detergents, cleaners, de-icers, solvents, pesticides, and herbicides. Stormwater needs to be protected from contact with these materials and any others that might pollute runoff. Spills, leaks, and drips can usually be prevented by practicing good housekeeping. Jobs where the risk of spills, leaks, or drips is high should never be done outdoors. Only dispense lubricants, oils, solvents, and other potential pollutants indoors or under a roof. Outdoors, when transferring fuels or oils, place drip pans underneath connections that might leak or spill. For bulk storage containers like above-ground tanks, they should be built with secondary containments such as berms, retaining walls, dikes, trenches, or diversion ponds to hold any leak if the tank shell fails. If your facility has a large volume of petroleum products on site, a spill prevention control and countermeasure plan has been developed to prevent and respond to releases. This plan can guide you on the proper measures for working with oils. However, be aware that rainwater or snowmelt may accumulate inside of secondary containments. Secondary containments are often fitted with drain valves. It may be tempting to just open one if water accumulates inside. But be advised that this accumulated water may not be drained without first being determined to be clean, and then only with authorization from your supervisor or stormwater coordinator. For portable containers, keep lids and tops on unless you are actually using that container. Use secondary containment such as a containment pallet or tray. Make sure all containers are clearly labeled and in good condition, not rusty, cracked, dented, or damaged. Damaged or leaking containers, such as cracked lead-acid batteries, cannot be stored outdoors, even temporarily. Keep outdoor work areas neat and orderly. When you are finished with an outdoor job or at the end of your shift, remove any debris or sweep the entire area. And put portable containers back in their indoor storage area when you are finished with them. Regularly pick up trash and debris that accumulates along fence lines and in ditches, and dispose of it properly.
So that just kind of covers some, things that you're going to interact and run into on a daily basis with the job that you're doing at your facilities. Talking about making sure things are labeled, using secondary containment, cleaning up spills, addressing spills, and we're going to get into a lot of that throughout the presentation. So we just want to show some videos and reiterate kind of the different messages that we're trying to let everybody know about as we go through this training. We couldn't do any of this without you. You know, our program is successful. You know, we go to different state conferences and share a lot about the different programs that we do, but none of that could be possible without all of your help and cooperation. You know, again, you're the eyes and ears out on the street. You're traveling. You're all over town, and you're seeing things that we're not going to be able to see. And so your cooperation with your program at your own, the stormwater program at your facility, and as you're out and about, is super helpful. And we couldn't do any of that without you. And so that's why we do these annual trainings to kind of update you with new information, but also kind of remind you and reiterate some of the things that we've been talking about for years when it comes to protecting our water quality. Conveyances and best management practices. So the definition of a conveyance is stormwater conveyance is a permanent waterway designed to convey stormwater runoff. What is the best management practice? BMPs are devices, practices, or methods that are used to manage stormwater runoff by controlling peak runoff rate, improving water quality, and managing runoff volume. So when we do our annual reporting to IDEM, we ask for a lot of this information. So if your specific department deals with conveyances or best management practices, there's certain reporting that we're required to do. And so there's certain reporting that you may be required to do to help us include that in the annual reporting. So we'll go over some of that, but documentation is really important for when IDEM audits us and when we have to do our annual reporting. So understanding what a conveyance and best management practices are is important. So you can think about that as you're documenting and recording any maintenance or work that you're doing on these items. So, and even an example of a structural best management practice is what we have at the county building. This was installed in 2012, and all of the stormwater runoff that hits that parking lot drains into these bioswale dry wells and is absorbed through the dry well and through the native plants that are planted, and it absorbs all the stormwater runoff, so none of that stormwater runoff makes it to a storm drain that goes to the river. So the whole idea is to capture all pollutants on site, clean it through this natural process, and not send any stormwater to the combined sewer system that we still have in place in some places. But with that, there's structural best management practice maintenances that have to happen on an annual basis. So you have to make sure that the infiltration basins are cleaned out from sediments and pollutants. You have to make sure that the dry wells cleaned out from sediments and pollutants. And you have to make sure that invasive plants aren't taking over and choking out the native vegetation. Best management practices can be structural or non-structural. Examples of structural BMPs include infiltration basins, dry wells. So a dry well is a, you could dig a dry well as big as you need it, but you're going to dig a hole and fill that with a gravel, and you're going to encourage water to go through that and absorb into the ground and go to the groundwater below instead of hanging out and flooding an area. But it also it filters out those pollutants that might be coming through stormwater runoff. Rain barrels, rain gardens, bioswales, vegetated swales and ditches, catch basins, filter strips, constructed wetlands, retention basins, wet ponds, dry tension basins, level spreaders. So those are linear dry wells in a way that slows down the flow of stormwater, lets the pollutants filter out especially if it's going like downhill or on a slope. And then you have green roofs. A lot of green roof is basically vegetation on the roof that captures the stormwater and prevents that runoff from going to a storm drain. And then there's non-structural BMPs, which are design approaches and practices to prevent runoff, like street sweeping. And we do street sweeping almost every day, so that's something that we different departments partner on. Minimizing disturbed area, grading, minimizing soil compaction, revegetation and erosion control. So making sure that bare soil isn't exposed and that sediment's running off to the storm drain, to the street, causing tracking and those types of things. So when in doubt, take the documentation route. Please try to document everything as best as you can. That includes waste disposal records. So you want to track if you're running a truck to get rid of waste, you want to track what that is, the date, the pounds, all that information needs to be tracked because we have to turn that in every year. All the stuff that we're sending, whether it's to the landfill or East Central Recycling, we have to track all of that. So make sure that you're keeping track of that because if you go into East Central Recycling, they're going to weigh the truck. They're going to tell you how much pounds you're taking in, what type of material you're taking in. A lot of this needs to be recorded and tracked because they asked for it. And then our employee trainings, obviously, which is what we're doing now. Even repairs and maintenance that you do on conveyances, storm drains, storm infrastructure, drainage ditches. A lot of that work and maintenance done on conveyances is supposed to be recorded, tracked, documented. So at the end of the year, when we get with the department heads to ask for that for our annual report, it's going to be easy to find. They're going to have that information, and that's something that we can plug right into the report. And then also include the quantities of materials that you're using for that maintenance. And then we also want to keep track of complaints and citizen reporting. So if you hear something that you learned in this workshop that you need to report to us, making sure you're taking record of that, when they called, the time they called, and what they called about, and just keeping track of that because that's stuff that we put in our annual reporting as well. And just making sure you're saving that paperwork. The invoices and receipts are sometimes great for tracking. And because we've never had an instance where we sat down with IDEM during an audit and they said, hey, that's too much information. We don't need that. They want all of it. So just keep track as much as you can. And I'm sure you'll hear more about this from your department heads as well. And then always having that documentation where you know where it is. So when we do our annual reporting and we ask for that information, you know where to find it, you know who to give it to, so we can keep track of everything. And just continued discussion about documentation. It's obviously can be different for each department. You all do different types of services and work. So it depends on each department what sort of tracking and documentation you would be doing. But again, when you're doing any maintenance on any conveyance or best management practice that I described in the previous slides, you want to keep track of that information so they know that those things are being kept up and that the maintenance is being maintained. And then to reiterate, location, date, time, how much water, materials, and tons was used, what was used in the maintenance or cleaning, where did you dispose of it, and then always try to put your employee initials in case there's a question about it so we could keep track and just if there is a specific question about a specific maintenance that we know who to contact. And this is just a reminder too that storm drains go to the river. In the case that there's a combined sewer, obviously that potentially goes to the treatment plant unless there's an overflow. So some of that stormwater does get cleaned at the treatment plant with our current system. But the goal and the message in mind is only rain in the drain. Storm drains go to the river, or if they don't go to the river, as mentioned, they go to a creek or some sort of drainage conveyance, eventually to the river. So nothing is acceptable to go in that storm drain other than rainwater. That's just the easiest way to say it, and that's the rule. So obviously you can see even in this picture, a lot of stormwater pollutants get picked up when it rains. So cigarette butts, grass clippings, a lot of litter and different pollutants, oil, hydrocarbons from leaking vehicles, those types of things. Those are all considered stormwater runoff pollutants. I just want to play this quick video about the original OG stormwater inspector.
What are you looking at?
Oh, the silent majesty of a winter's morn, the clean, cool chill of the holiday air. In his bathrobe, emptying a chemical toilet into my sewer.
Full!
Ah, yeah.
Clark, please. He doesn't know any better.
You ought to know it's illegal. It's a storm sewer.
So obviously I edited that from the original version. But right when I saw that, being in the stormwater field, when I saw it, I was like, man, Clark Griswold is teaching people about stormwater pollution prevention and just happens to be Cousin Eddie, But again, Cousin Eddie should not be emptying what everything he's emptying into the storm drain. It's illegal. And if you've watched the video, or the movie, which I hope everybody has, it eventually blows up, right? I think that's what happens, right? The one guy that's always smoking the cigar throws the cigar and it blows up. So obviously it can be very dangerous if you're polluting to your storm drain, based on that movie. Some common pollutants found in stormwater, sediment is a really big one. So, sediment, a lot of times we overlook that. We think that, sediment's natural, soil's natural. So it's not a big deal if it's going to the storm drain because it's going to the river and the river's natural. That's not true. It's actually, sediment can contain a lot of hydrocarbons and other pollutants, heavy metals and things like that. But it also is really bad for the aquatic life in the river, and it also clogs storm drain infrastructure. So there are multiple issues with sediment, and it is the leading pollutant in stormwater runoff today. Grass clippings, so that's a major issue, and that's something we just have to reiterate over and over again. Grass clippings are basically nutrients and nitrogen going directly to the storm drain and directly to the river, which can cause algal blooms and can cause fish kills and other aquatic issues. But also they're dangerous, right? If a motorcycle or a bicyclist hits that, I've heard so many stories of a motorcycle turning a corner, hitting where grass clippings are in the yard and just, wiping out and completely getting hurt and messing up the bike. So it's dangerous. Also, it's unsightly, right? It's something that, how many times you drive down the street and you see somebody mowing the yard and everything is just blown to the street. And there's ordinances against it. It should never happen. It happens all the time. So we try to keep getting that message out there that grass clippings belong blown back onto the grass. They need to be swept up. They need to be clean. They should never be in the gutter, the street, on the sidewalk, or in the storm drain. The other issue is they'll clog the storm drain, and that causes flash flooding. Detergents and soaps, nothing should ever be washed out where the soapy water is going to a storm drain. If you're washing something like that and you're using any sort of detergent or soap, it should be done on a vegetated area where it can be absorbed into that vegetation, or go to a car wash that has a sanitary line where all of that material is going to the sanitary drain and it's going to get cleaned. Nothing should ever be done out there on the curb where it's just going straight to the storm drain. Fertilizers, if you're applying them or using them at your home or at work, make sure you're reading the labels, make sure you know what you're putting on. A lot of times a soil test is important because you could be adding phosphorus for no reason. Like you could have fertilizer with phosphorus in it and you absolutely don't need it based on a soil test, and you're just wasting your money, and you're sending that to a storm drain and it's causing problems with the water quality and everything as well. So make sure you know what you're doing there, and that you're not broadcast spraying fertilizer onto a sidewalk or street, so when it rains, it's just picking all that fertilizer up into the storm drain. Sediment and heavy metals we've already discussed. Leaf and debris. Leaves have nutrients too, so they're sending nutrients to the river, but they're also clogging our storm infrastructure. A lot of our sewer maintenance calls will be related to leaves and grass clippings have clogged the storm drain infrastructure, and then someone's complaining about flash flooding in front of their house. Chemicals and paint obviously should never be dumped in any sort of drain. That should all be disposed of properly. We have a household hazardous program at East Central Recycling, but any of that material that you're trying to get rid of needs to be disposed of properly, and you need to record all of that. And then leaking vehicles obviously is an issue. So making sure that if you have leaks that you're getting with your mechanics, you're getting with the garage, you're letting them know that there's a leak and that it needs to be fixed, and that you're cleaning up those leaks if your car or truck or vehicle is sitting in certain areas, that you have absorbent pads, and that you're doing everything that you got to do to clean up leaks and spills. Other common pollutants, overflowing dumpsters are a big problem. A lot of the litter and things that you see blowing around everywhere are usually related to overflowing dumpsters. Anytime you can't close that lid and it sits on top of it properly, it's practically a violation because the dumpster's too full. It needs to be emptied, and all that material is just going to blow everywhere and cause lots of litter and problems. So making sure that that doesn't happen and that dumpsters aren't overflowing, and that you're not piling stuff up on the side of the dumpster, causing more issues. Litter and trash debris, that's pretty self-explanatory. making sure that you're keeping the facility and your job site, wherever you're working, tidy, that you're not leaving litter behind, and that you're making sure that you're picking everything up. Pet waste, that's more of kind of a residential thing. Pet waste does contain bacteria, so it's important that you're picking up your pet waste at your home, but that's not necessarily applicable to your job. I don't think any of the departments have dogs maybe running around in the facility. Snert, snow mixed with dirt, so that's just basically piles of snow that are sitting there forever waiting to melt, that are mixed with salt, all kinds of nasty stuff. And then you typically, when it drains, it's just draining right to that storm drain. So usually if you're plowing, you want to get those piles of snow up onto vegetated surfaces. You don't want to, if possible, you don't want to push all that plow to a concrete surface, all the snow that you're plowing to a concrete surface, and then when it melts, it's just going to drain to that storm drain. You want to try to get that up to a vegetated area so when it drains, it's absorbing into that vegetation. Hydrocarbons, illegal dumping with Cousin Eddie. Excess salt, so making sure that you're not dropping a lot of salt, that you're making sure that everything's working and functioning properly with the plow and salt trucks. And then improper storage. So like containers full of oil or all kinds of things that are sitting outside, aren't undercover and aren't labeled, are really big red flags for IDEM. IDEM will come. If they see any of that, that's an automatic write-up. If they go to an area, there's no cover, there's no secondary containment, and there's a 55-gallon drum or a bigger container of something and nobody knows what it is, that's a big red flag, and that's something that we've been written up for before. So just you want to be aware of that. Here's another video just to reiterate some of the landscaping and pollution prevention that we've mentioned a little bit of.
Parks, open spaces, building grounds, sports fields, golf courses, beaches, wetlands, greenways, roadway medians, and shoulders. Municipalities have to maintain acres and acres of land. This maintenance utilizes tons of fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides. Used correctly, these chemicals do not harm stormwater, but when used improperly or over-applied, they can cause substantial harm. Try to avoid or minimize use of fertilizers and synthetic chemicals as much as possible. For lawns and gardens, consider native grasses and vegetation in place of ornamentals. Even better yet is xeriscaping. For grass clippings and other landscaping wastes, compost them if possible. Use the compost in place of synthetic fertilizer. If you can't compost, dispose of the wastes in a landfill or other safe area. Don't dispose of them in ditches or other storm drainage devices. When synthetic landscaping chemicals are used, use them strictly according to the manufacturer's recommendations. Read the label and user instructions carefully before applying any chemical. If you are not sure about where, when, how much, or how often a specific chemical should be used, call the manufacturer or dealer from whom you bought it. Make sure you are using this chemical correctly and safely. Do not apply any chemicals or fertilizer during a rainstorm, or if one is expected shortly, unless it is specifically okayed in the product instructions. Never over-apply. It is simply not true that if 50 pounds of fertilizer X is good, 100 pounds is twice as good. That extra 50 pounds may do nothing but wind up in the nearest stream or pond where it can kill aquatic life. Do not apply any chemical to a water body or wetland or inside of established no-spray buffer zones around these waters unless the application is approved by state or local agricultural or wildlife authorities. When broadcast spreading lawn care products, try to avoid hitting paved surfaces. If you do, sweep or blow them back onto the target areas. Do not apply chemicals when wind speeds are high. That increases the risk of spreading onto non-target areas. When applying, make sure the applicator has been calibrated recently and is applying at the rate you set it for. Every applicator device should be calibrated at least annually. Load applicator equipment on a paved surface or indoors where leaks and spills can be controlled. If you have a spill or leak of fertilizer or chemical, clean it up according to established spill control and response procedures. Your organization may have an integrated pest management program in place that dictates what landscape chemicals will be used and how. If you are involved in landscaping, read and follow the program. It may mean that you will need formal training and applicator certification. Similarly, some states and municipalities require all persons who apply lawn and garden chemicals to be certified. Do not apply any chemicals unless you are properly authorized. It may be necessary to comply with the Pesticide General Permit to apply pesticides on or near water bodies. And in any case involving synthetic chemicals, use appropriate safety measures when mixing or applying them, including wearing the proper personal protective equipment. The product label and the material safety data sheet will have information on this.
So again, to reiterate, if you're doing any sort of landscaping, just try to make sure you're cleaning up after you're done. It just take a few minutes to sweep up grass clippings, any debris that might have went to the roadway near a storm drain, on a sidewalk. Make sure you're doing your best to clean that up. A lot of you don't apply pesticides, chemicals, fertilizers, and things like that. But if you do, just make sure you're following those policies and procedures and not broadcasting it onto hard surfaces so it's just draining to the river. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Courtney.
Okay, so a lot of what I'm going to talk about is going to be reiterated from what Jason was saying, and he covered some in the videos, but I'm going to go more into what I see on my inspections. When I'm doing the facility inspections, I do them annually. They are required quarterly though, so someone in the department is going to have to be aware of that and doing those inspections quarterly. So what do we mean when we say facility? Because it's not going to apply to everybody that's here today, more than likely. So facility is a department that is owned by the MS4 and that has the potential to spill hazardous materials and pollute stormwater. So for us, that's like our street departments, our parks departments, wastewater treatment plant, so on and so forth. So if you're working in these facilities, there are some things you've got to know about. You need to know what the SWIP book is, why it's important, where it's at, and I'll go into more detail. You have to know where to record and document the different information that you have for your daily job, which we've also hit on. You need to know where your on-site drains go. That I have heard is a favorite question of the new IDEM MS4 inspector, to just point at an employee and say, hey, where does that drain go? So trying to be conscious of that at all times. How to address spills, and I will have a very short video on that from New Zealand because all of the American ones were like 10 minutes. And again, I'm going through items that I'm seeing on my inspections at different facilities so that you can be aware. So what is the SWIP book? It stands for Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan. I think only one department is it black. The rest have these orange binders that you see here. And what it contains is information about your specific facility. So the facility map, what materials you have on site, which that has to be updated annually, and I will ask for help on that because I don't know what you do. Then the different activities that you do. Some facilities like to keep their logs in the SWIP, others like to keep it where they're actually performing those activities. Either way is fine as long as it is clear and you can provide it to us when we ask. So then one of the bigger things that I hit on during inspections is secondary containment, which we saw in that video. And one of the harder parts is on your workbenches. Once something is opened, it is considered, it needs to be contained. As long as it is closed, it's sealed, it can be fine. But once you open it, it needs to have secondary containment. So on workbenches, having tubs that you can put open canisters and such in, having the pallets for larger 55-gallon drums. Typically, secondary containment needs to be 110% volume of whatever it's holding. So for instance, a 55-gallon drum, the containment would need to be able to hold 60.5 gallons in case that you had complete failure of that container. What you have to be careful of is stacking on top of, like you see in that middle picture, which also doesn't have secondary containment for all of the drums. But once you start stacking on top of, you're going to need more containment than what you might have. Another big one, labeling. Jason's hit on this. You need to have very clear labels. If something's spilled, you've got to be able to figure out what it is quick. You need to know the potential dangers. You need to know which MSD sheet you're looking for. And also, you want to have clear labels for your spill kits. You want to be able to find those quickly in case of a spill. You don't want to be spending time running around like, where'd our spill kit go? So if you use your spill kit and you take it away from its designated area, please be sure to return it. If you had to use stuff out of it, make sure that it's full, that everything you would need for a spill is in there. And then the third picture shows container of oil dry, which doesn't need secondary containment, but then the contaminated oil dry container does. Spills and leaks. As that video stated, this is one of the higher potentials for polluting stormwater, and they need to be contained as quickly as you can. Any vehicles that are leaking outside, get them inside. Clean up the outside spill. Make sure that you're putting a pan, drip pan underneath. That is the top right picture. The top left shows an uncontained leak outside of the facility, and you can actually see those a lot of times close to storm drains. So that's where you've got to be conscious that, hey, there's a storm drain nearby. We need to cover it, protect it, get that spill cleaned up, and get that vehicle out inside away from being outside. Then one in the middle, the absorbent mat is doing no good because it was sitting beside the leak. It was not actually underneath the leak absorbing it. And I'm looking for any signs that there were leaks that weren't contained or weren't cleaned up immediately. So we'll go through how you do a cleanup real quick.
Responding to a spill is relatively straightforward if you follow these simple steps. Firstly, before responding, make sure it's safe to do so. Check the STS sheet and wear the correct protective apparel. The second step is to stop the source so the spill doesn't get any worse. That includes righting the container, plugging it, or turning off the tap. Thirdly, protect the stormwater. A spill tech sock is a great way of doing this. Place it in front of the spill so that it doesn't go any further. Once contained, you can now take your time and notify someone. For large spills, you may need to notify the local pollution response helpline. For smaller spills, normally it's a case of just calling your manager to let them know what you're doing. The fifth step is to clean up. Use the contents of your spill kit to clean up the spill effectively. If you're using a loose absorbent, start from the outside edge of the spill and work your way to the centre. Give the absorbent a couple of minutes to do its job. This is a good time to get your contaminated waste bag out of your spill kit and your brush and pan ready for the cleanup. Once it's had a chance to absorb the spilt liquid, then use a broom to move the absorbent back and forth through the spill to clean up as much as you can. The brush and pan can now be used to clean up the spill absorbent and place it in the contaminated waste bag. Once completed, you need to dispose of your spill appropriately. Contact your local waste disposal contractor and ensure you label the spill as contaminated. The final step is to restock and review. It's important that you share your knowledge so that the spill doesn't happen again.
So just a quick summary. You got to know whether a specific drain goes to the sanitary or storm system. You got 50-50 shot of getting it right. But a lot of times to help employees, it'll be stenciled and spray painted. So if you're in a panic, look for the stencil. The lower left image is hard to see. I realize that a lot of the storm drains need re-stenciled, and I just recently found the stencil for that. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to get some time and come out to facilities and spray those for you. But again, for storm drains, you gotta have extra caution. You gotta know where they are and protect those in case of any leaks or spills. Know where the SWIP book is. It should not be locked in someone's drawer or office. All employees should have access to it at any time in case you need to refer to it, because if you have a larger spill than what you can handle, it has emergency contact information in there, so that you know how to proceed with that. Know where the spill kits are. Again, if you have a spill, you don't want to waste time looking for the spill kit to get it contained and cleaned up. How to address the properly address small and medium spills, and then where to log and record maintenance information. So if you have an oil water separator on site, how often it's cleaned. You need to log if you are the one doing the cleaning or if a company comes in and cleans it. If you're getting rid of waste materials, going to ECR, it can be as simple as keeping those invoices in your SWIP book, or if you would prefer to have a physical spreadsheet and log, that's fine too. Just making sure that you know how your department does it and that you are doing your part to record all of that information. Again, document. We're hitting on that a lot because IDEM is really starting to come down on more documentation. And with that, going on to Laura.
How's everyone doing? We're in the final stretch. Okay, so I'm going to talk about illicit discharge detection and elimination. I'm going to break that down here. So an illicit discharge is anything that goes into a storm drain that is not entirely storm water. And that would include spills, illegal dumping, illegal tie-ins to the storm drain. Detection, we have over 900 outfalls that we check. We split that up so that we check about 20% every year so that we can fill all of those within our permit cycle, which is a 5-year cycle. We check during dry weather so that if those outfalls are flowing, we know there is something potentially going on that we need to check. And we go out, we check those pipes. If they are flowing, then we take a sample and we take that back to the lab and we test that sample. There's certain indicators that will give us an idea whether that sample is natural water, wastewater, wash water, or tap or irrigation water. Then we go to the elimination process and we try to eliminate any of those illicit discharges that are a problem. We do that by tracking storm lines, potentially televising, dye testing. We do optical brightener tests, things like that. And then there's also, just random spills, and obviously those need to be tracked and taken care of immediately. There are some exemptions to the illicit discharge rule, and we'll talk about those here. So those, okay, there we go. Keep moving it. Okay, there we go. I'm not going to touch it. Excess storm sewer cleaning water. So after the storm sewers are clean, anything that's left over that is uncontaminated can then go into the storm sewer. Sump pump and roof drains, as long as they're uncontaminated. Residential and non-commercial car washes can go into the storm drains. Uncontaminated condensate, so like from air conditioners. Hydrant flushing, pumped groundwater, firefighting activities, irrigation waters, natural springs, dechlorinated or debrominated residential pool drainage, uncontaminated groundwater, and external building washdowns and pavement wash waters, as long as there's no detergents or any sort of hazardous materials in those washes. Those are all exempt. So as you're out there looking, keeping an eye out, and we've stressed this many times, but you are our additional eyes and ears. Know that those things are exempt, but you feel free to tell us anything that you see, and we can determine if it is exempt or not. So we want to let you know what to look for. Look for anything non-rain that's flowing into a storm drain. anyone that is putting something into the storm drain that shouldn't be there, and we've talked about a lot of those things. Any sort of spills or overflows that should not be happening. People putting lawn clippings, leaves, trash into the storm drains, and any flow coming out of a storm drain outfall if there has been no rain within the previous 48 hours. So you see specifically a storm drain flowing when it shouldn't be, let us know. There may be a reason that maybe a natural spring is tied in, and that's okay, but we need to check it out. So just let us know. And then what you look for in the waterways to tell us if there might be a problem would include discoloration, unnatural turbidity. Obviously, we have turbidity a lot when it rains, but if you see, for example, there's a picture there, that second picture on the bottom, just a plume of turbidity that should not be happening because it hasn't rained, let us know. In that case, it was a tributary running in that had a definite problem. Oil sheens, dead fish, and unusual odors. Let us know if you see something like that. And then, if you see something, say something. Take pictures, take a video, send it to us, text us, call us, email us. We're going to give you all of that information. Please get a hold of us. We're also going to be issuing these cool visor things to put on your visors. You're going to get one per vehicle, and it has a lot of cool features that are going to be handy for you, sunglasses holder, pocket for registration and things like that. But beyond that, we have our phone number on there, and if you call that phone number, even if we're not there, we'll give you someone to call, additional cell phone number to call if you're having a problem. We're also going to have a card in there that has similar information, and feel free to, write our cell phone numbers on there and get a hold of us if you see a problem. We really appreciate the fact that you are out there and can let us know when we may not see something. I will tell you to feel free to send, I'm sure you get stormwater complaints and questions. Feel free to send those our way, but I will tell you that we do have a few limitations. We get a lot of flooding calls. We don't handle flood quantity, we handle flood quality. So some of those things we cannot handle, but we may be able to send those on to another department, and you may know which department is applicable for that. Personal property, we really can't do a whole lot about. We can, there are certain things that we can't address, but in many cases there are limitations, and agriculture has certain limitations. So just so you know, but feel free to send anything our way. Changes to the new permit. We've covered a lot of these, so I'll go through the ones that we've talked about relatively quickly. But documentation is important. We're going to be getting with your departments to try to find ways to make this a little easier for you to set up spreadsheets and things like that. But we need everything documented, and that's coming down from EPA and IDEM. It's not just our rule, as we've mentioned. You're going to see a lot of new standard operating procedures and operations manuals for your facilities, and they're going to have guidance on waste disposal, pollution reduction procedures, and that visual surface conveyance inspection. So that's where, like, for example, the sanitation department, say you're on a truck that goes through Morningside, regularly, the Morningside neighborhood, and you cross Muncie Creek constantly. Keep an eye on Muncie Creek. We're going to be able to document that, and that is going to help us fulfill those regulations that we need to be keeping eyes on all our conveyances. And there's going to be lots of other examples, depending on your department, where you're going to be able to watch pipes and rivers and streams. Let's see. Structure cleaning and disposal. There's some new things. So extracted water must be pre-treated before going in the MS4 storm system. So I believe we might be already doing that, but we need to make sure that we're doing that. Waste must be disposed of properly. We must document the weight in tons. Sometimes we'll get numbers, 2 dumps. We need to know how many tons of waste was disposed. And something that's new is where it was disposed. We need documentation of where that waste went in case we would have to track something back. Training, we talked about this a little bit, but so seasonal employees, part-time employees will need to be trained within the first 30 days, and then new full-time employees will need to be trained within 90 days. And what we're going to have is basically a video of this training, and we'll be able to get that for you guys. And this is going to be really up to your department heads and some of you who are supervisors, but we're going to get that to you, and then they can watch that and they'll be able to document that they watched that video. And then we're going to have the same annual training, which is what we're doing right now. Well, thank you very much for coming out. We appreciate all of your work, and we look forward to working with you and getting that information. And if you have any questions or any way we can make this easier for you, just let us know.